Hello, fellow plant enthusiasts. I hope you guys had a great Christmas and look forward to the New Year's. So anyway, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I've been making these wonderful plant macrame hangers, taking wall planters, and also how to properly plant them so you don't have to worry about making such a mess. So to begin, I'm going to show you a few that I have. I've made a bunch more recently, but I'm just going to show you some of my select ones. You can find different styles, whether you get them from like Hobby Lobby or Amazon or elsewhere. And I used some cording, and sometimes you can actually have the string come out further if you want like a tassel. Like here's one I made where I gave it a nice long cording. And this one has the turquoise and the gray, and it kind of reminds me of the color scheme of the original Bondi Blue iMac back from 1998. So I call this my tribute series. Anyway, and then, with the black macrame cording you can get from Michaels, and I don't have a tassel on this one. It looks very chic, if you want something a little nice and chic. This one, I brought it home for Christmas, but I had it in my office. It wasn't near a window, and I didn't plant enough sprigs of the Pilea libanensis, so I kind of want to make more in here to get it a little fuller. And then this is one I planted recently. I gave it just a small little tassel, and I stuck a succulent in there, and I have the gray cording. So, to start, you need to find the planter you want to use. And one nice thing about this kind, like some of these planters, like this one, doesn't have a base, so you can't set it down. Neither can you with this one, but of all the ones I've found, this style not only looks the most elegant, this planter, but it's the highest quality, the best made, and it has a nice satin finish. And years ago, I bought a thing from IKEA called, it's their Asker series. You can't buy them now, but you can find them on eBay. And they had something that was shaped more like this that you can hang on a thing for the kitchen. But this finish looks like that. I just need to figure out where I put mine to see how close they are, but the quality of this is really great. And this one here comes in both white and yellow, and it has dimples reminiscent of a golf ball. Now, if you're wondering what this sheet of paper is on the inside, I basically, as I sell these, or even if I sell plants on Facebook or whatnot, I have something like this to give people so they can check out my YouTube channel on plants. I have a couple groups on Facebook. One is a general group on plants. I tried to make it the local group, but I had so much interest from all over the world, and I have a lot of people who are in this group now. And then I have a local marketplace group I set up. And then there's a meetup group on plants, and there aren't that many around, so anyway, I've, like this group, like on their Zoom meetings, we'll get people from Florida, Michigan. So anyway, I have that for anyone local who wants to join that. And my original YouTube channel where I have a lot of other things as well. So, with all this, let's get started. So I'm going to have to clear out a place to hang this. And that's a nice thing about the ones with a flat base. They don't look as chic as not having a base, but they're easier when you're trying to plant a plant in them versus trying to balance this, etc. So this is the planter I'm going to use, and I use this as padding. And now I'm going to do a 2-color scheme one as a demonstration. Now with this 2-color scheme, I had to tie a knot, and I place it in the back. You can actually have the fibers come out longer and tuck away if you want it just to be a little neater. Or you can that way get 4 tassels coming down if you wanted. But I'm going to use the gray and the blue. So I typically measure I want a total of 13 feet. That's what I found seems to work the best without wasting too much cording for these. So the table's 6 feet, so I'll measure a little longer. And then, since usually I'll fold and measure out the same length again and then cut, but since I'm doing a 2-color scheme, I'm doing half of that, and then I can now pull out, oops. So now I can move this cording out of the way. And then, what's nice about this cording, which you can get from Hobby Lobby, is that it's designed to where you can connect the ends via applying heat. So I'm actually going to set this down, and even with this, you just need a way to hold it in place. This lighter hasn't been giving me a good flame, and it's on the high setting. I'm not sure why, but I'll hold them together. I'll press it down just ever so slightly, and it's slightly fused, and then I can turn it and do the same. So with it turned, I can pull it and make sure these are touching. And then while it's still hot, try to press it together without burning my hands. And that's all there is to it. And feel free to comment if you have any ideas to where I can get a better way of connecting these, but you can see it's holding up. Now that I have it in that position, I can take this, and let me try not to scratch it. And typically, I've learned that it's best to thread it in. Now, if I want to have, you know, one color on the inside, it's always good, like here, to match that color at the bottom versus a different color, because it doesn't look off that way. So I'm going to do the turquoise on the inside. So you thread it in from the front versus from the back. If you thread it in from the back, it will be like this, where the loop is on the back, and it just, you know, it depends on what look you're trying to achieve. But if you thread it from the front, you have a loop in the middle, and it seems to work out better. So I'm going to thread the turquoise to the right side and run it through. And then I want to make sure that the part that I connected is going to be concealed in the back. So, you know, you may have to just massage it a little bit, and there we go, we have it concealed. So now that we have this, we can start setting up the long wand portion of this. So next, I'm going to hang a key ring. I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to thread these through the front of the key ring versus the back. It's just the look you want to get, so it's not as big of an ordeal. But I'm threading them in, and then I'm going to set up a square knot. So, you know, I'm going to take one cording, the one on the right is typically what I start with, fold it over like that. Whoops, let me pull it. Fold it over, take the other side under that, in here, pull it through, and then I'm going to tie this. Now, one thing to note is this may be too long. Now, when you have these extremely long, it's going to want to hang out like this from the wall. If it's a little shorter, it won't. Now, some of these work better than others when doing that. Like this style, for example, I noticed, you see how it really arches? But, you know, it makes the plant fan out and away from the wall, which is a nice effect when you have nice lush green foliage in there. This one here, this style, it doesn't bend out, you know, it doesn't arch as much. So this one will be a little flush against the wall, and with thinner cording than what I used will be even better. But you can always add a nail or something here to hold it back if you don't like that look. You know, these do angle a little bit to help the plant fan out. So now that I have this, I'll use these two fingers to raise it up a little bit and then pull just so I can get it a little shorter. And then you want to make sure it's going to be tight. And once I have that, this is a half square. I'm going to put this in the front, loop this under and behind the two strands to do a square knot. Now keep in mind that this video is not really on teaching a square knot, which is a very basic square knot. When I got into macrame, I watched a lot of videos, and every video on macrame was trying to teach you how to do the knot. And this video is for people who already know how to do a knot, or you can watch other videos on how to. And then it's basically on teaching how to do this, so I'm not going to really go through the details on how to make the knots that, you know, like some people do. So I don't need to do multiple demonstrations for you on here. But what's nice about using two colors versus one, sometimes when making macrame, you may end up doing the knot incorrectly, like on one side, and then have to undo a few, but this helps keep it checked. Where you see the loop is where you can start if you forgot your place to do the next side. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just run this all the way down, and then once I do, we'll show you how we do the rest of that. And when I say we, I mean me, myself, and I. Okay, so now we are near the bottom of this, so let me show you how I mitigate this. I'm going to basically run a square, square knots till I get to the very bottom, and I can put one more. You can always pull this up to tighten if you want to, but you don't want to get it way too tight because I can actually get one more in there, but if you get it way too tight, it becomes a little harder to work with on the back when you first start. Because what I do is, I'll take this off the hook, fold it to the back, and I'm going to move this back over. And I have this simple contraption which I made on my own. Now, what I learned is rather than have this hang down and look ugly, I'll see the one where I have a loop on that side is the one I loop first. This is a paper clip that's one of the ones that has a insulated or sheath around it versus just a hard metal. And I'll give some slack, loop it in that loop, and what I'm going to do is basically stick it under here. Now, when I use the cotton macrame cording, or I get this way too tight, it's hard to pull this thing out, and it's, hard on the fingers. So then you can loop this through all the way. And then I can get the other side. Try not to get through the fibers in the cording. And then I have to get that piece under and pull. There we go. So this is a very useful tool to make. And this is how I have it on the back. And you see how nice and sleek it is on the front. And with that, I can now work on the back. So I start by tying a half knot, and I was using safety pins, but I learned that it's easier if I just hold things with an alligator clip, and you can get these at Michael's. They come in two sizes. This one has a curve, which is nice because it can curve around the contours. And this one here is just a smaller and straight, so they're both pretty useful. So now that I have that, I bring this to the front, and basically I'll pull this up. You don't want to pull it way too tight to where this starts coming up like that. So I'll pull this here using the other small alligator clip it there, and then I have to go to the back and loop this around. And what I'm doing by doing it that way versus just looping 2 loops around is I'm having one side one color and the other side another color. Now, if it's not perfectly aligned, no need to worry at the moment, because that can be corrected. So now I have that looped in the back, hanging down, and then you can go to the front, and then I'll take the cording through the middle of that, and the other cording through the middle here. And then I can go ahead and set up a square knot. So what I'll do is make sure that's centered. So I'm doing just one for the time being, then I can take this out, the one in the back out, and it's just one to hold it into place. Now, what I like about this style is there's a little lip here, so I typically have this to come that way, so I want to make sure this is going to be tight enough for that. So I basically have to take this cording and pull, and take the other side and pull from the back to tighten. And as I get it tight and I want it centered, I can use the other alligator clips to clip it. And then I can pull from the front and get this half square tighter. And this way you're adjusting the tension on this to where it's going to, be roughly centered if you have the tension equal on both sides, and this is not going to be way too loose. It's good to have a little play, because you can always adjust this if you want that way or this way, depending on what look you're trying to achieve. So you can give it a little play, but you don't want it too loose, because then it will have way too much play. So this is still a little loose for what I want. So I'm going to continue pulling a little bit more in the back, and I think I want to give this a little, let's see, yes, give this a little more tension from the back. So this is the tricky part, is getting it to be as tight as you want. Then I can pull these a little more. And one thing that would help is to take one of the clips and clip it. So now I have these two close together, so that I can adjust the tension on that. And as you can see, it's getting there. It's also easier to do this off camera than on camera. So now that that is taken care of, and we have this like that, it's not quite as tight as I had intended. So I'm going to pull this up a little more from here and pull the other side as well. And then pull. And then I can work on the finishing the square knot. And once you put the second one, it's in there and you can see how tight it is. And this one is hanging down a little. I can always move it up, but it's going to be just a little lower design. Some people like different designs because everyone has their own tastes, so it's not something I'm too worried about. You know, and if it is a little funky, I can always untie it and start, you know, redo it if need be, but that's a pain. You know, these are handmade, they're not all going to be identical. But what you want to do is just a small handful of square knots. As these come down, they end up pulling this and making this tighter as well, which is good. And you see here, if I wrap this around, the colors are going to be alternated, and it's nicer to have one side one color, the other side a different color. So I'm going to just continue this a little more. Like that. And then I can wrap the back. You know, I could keep going more with square knots, but as you can see, I'm running low in cording. And to keep it a lower profile on the back, so it's not like all this knotting sticking out, I'm gonna just run it from behind here and then tie a knot. And I've noticed that if I do this, I hold it down, use the alligator clips, I can go ahead and tie it a little tighter. And you see how this is moving around? You don't want that. So this is not really finished just yet. You know, I ended up making this a little too tight, which is wreaking havoc on the rest of it and not working. So I'm going to have to actually untie this and start over. Well, not from the beginning, just from this portion. So now I'll have to get this under here. And that's one reason is because this isn't perfectly tight. You know, it's not as tight as I want it to, but when you do things in front of the camera, it becomes a little harder to do. So you'll see what we'll do to keep this from popping up, but now I have this. I can go back and not tighten it quite as tight. And then I'm going to loop this around the strands that are going underneath. And this way, it will hold them together and keep that from spreading out too far. And I don't have enough cording to create a nice tassel, but I do have a mess in the front to deal with. So I'm going to slide these out. And these actually do turn out better than this one did. This one's just a little funky because of working it on camera. But like I said, you can always adjust the cording. So now this is what I have. You know, I can now trim these or just tuck them in. So I'm just going to tuck these in for now. And I have this nice macrame hanger. And now it's time to do a little bit of planting. Here I have a mix of roughly 50% perlite and 50% potting soil. And I have these succulents. I'm going to move these out of the way just so I don't get them dirty. And I'm actually going to stick a succulent in here. So to start, I have a spoon. So what I'm going to be doing is just filling this up slowly with a spoon. And this way you're not making a mess. I actually did this mix yesterday, and the bag of potting soil, you know, it's a little moist, so it's not creating as much dust, which is nice. I don't like just storing things though without it being too dry so it doesn't mold up, but you know, you use it fast enough, you don't have to worry. Now some people may prefer like gravel or something at the bottom to hold excess water. It's all a matter of preference, but when these are hanging on the wall, they're not really being watered as often because people tend to neglect them, and sometimes they're a pain to water if you're not careful or if you hang them too high. I had this one hanging way too high and I filled up the soil all the way to the top, that at one point I did overfill with water, that is. So it's easier when you hang it somewhere where you can actually take it off the wall to water, and the fact that this has a flat bottom helps. Okay, as you can see, I have it filled to about that deep from the top. And the reason being is because these are established in their pots, so it's like a little plug. I want to make sure I can get this in there nicely, so I'm going to push this in. There we go. And then take little bits of spoonfuls and just start filling it in. Sometimes there's one side that's easy to put in versus the others because you don't want to make a mess, but I do have my trusty vacuum cleaner. It's just one of those cheap USB vacuum cleaners that have terrible reviews, people complaining that it lacks suction. They actually work really well. And then I have a power bank for my iPhone and iPad, so anyway, I can actually just use this to power this on. And if I make a mess, you'll get to see it in action. Then you can bend the plug back and stick that in there. So I'm making sure I press the plug in there deep enough. Trying to spread the soil all the way in the back as well. You don't want to skimp out on potting soil, but you don't want to overplant this, because if you stick soil up to the rim, then when you water, it can easily overflow. So I'm just going to brush off a little bit of the soil. I have all this spillage over here. And I'm also going to have to blow the loose stuff off here. here we go. We have a nice planter that's ready for watering. Of course, I don't like how this piece is not fully in there and there's one in the back, so I'm actually going to turn this plug around in there a little. You know, now it's filling up a little better. I do need to put a little more soil in there though. Okay. Now I'll adjust this. And now when I want to water, I can just use a little shot glass at a time just to give it a little bit of water. Then make sure the loop is there. I really should cut these, so I'm going to trim them a little bit. Okay. And now you'll get to see my vacuum cleaner in action. Now a lot of this soil, I'm actually going to use this edge. You know, I can just take and try to put back in there. It's not much, but why waste? Okay. Get this out of the way. And vacuum. You can try to dust off some of the soil off that, just so it's out of the way. Now I can go water this and hang it. So I have a shot glass with a little water. So if you lean it back and pour, you can get it in there without making a mess. Although I did have one little drop there, you can always dab it with a paper towel. And we can hang it up. And that's how it looks. You know, it doesn't stick out very far and it fans out, which is a nice look. But if someone prefers it flush, they can always put a nail there. And then, suppose you make one and it doesn't turn out too tight, or you don't like the amount of play it has, you can always dab it on the back with a little bit of super glue to hold it in place if you wanted to. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it inspiring to make your own macrame wall planters. Thanks for watching and happy planting. Oh, one more thing. Please subscribe. Thank you.